Good afternoon, friends. At the outset, I'd like to welcome all of you to the Navy Day press conference, which has got recommenced after almost 2 years. As you are well aware, the Indian Navy observes this Navy Week on 4th of December every year. Is to commemorate the daring and trailblazing attack by the Indian naval warships in the 1971 war. This being the 50th year of the 70th war and also the Swarnim Vijay Varsh, this day is special for us, and therefore it's appropriate that we recognize the work done by the forefathers who were there in 1971. As you are well aware, I took over as a CNC West on the 30th, and when Admiral Hari Kumar has moved up as the Chief of the Naval Staff. For those of you who don't know, I've served almost 15 years in WNC, and all my 4 commands from V to Virat have been at Mumbai. I've also had the good privilege of being the Chief of Staff over here in 2018-19. So it's good to see a lot of friends in the media, known faces, and some of you we've interacted earlier as well. The Navy currently has all 3 CNCs and the Chief who just taken over on the 1st of December or thereabouts. And we look forward to working with each other in great synergy in the years ahead. What I'm going to talk about today is the larger perspective. Much of the work was done during the time of Admiral Hari Kumar when he was CNC West. Be it the cyclone relief, be it the effort on COVID, be it the effort on operations. I would also like to make you aware that 8th of December is the award of President's Colors to the Killers Cotton here in Mumbai. And as you are well aware, the Indian Navy has grown multifold in the years that have gone by, and we look forward to future growth as well. On the security front, the Indo-Pacific has gained a lot of significance, and this is coupled with the traditional and the non-traditional threats that have remained in the area of responsibility. Our Prime Minister's effort and directives on Sagar, which is security and growth for all, are well known to you, and therefore we will intend to follow that in letter and spirit. Of course, Sagar has also brought in clear maritime focus to the nation, and towards that the Indian Navy will do all it can towards furthering that goal. As far as the geography is concerned, as a country we are blessed to be located in the area that we are. Almost all the trade and economies of the world are governed through the region that passes close to our shores, and therefore the Indian Navy has a major role to play in the maritime domain, both from the national economy and the world or global economy's perspective is concerned. Some of you would be very well aware that the Indian Navy has a clearly articulated vision, a clear strategy, and a large number of documents which say where it is and where it is headed. So we intend to operate over a wide spectrum, and this will range from war fighting on one end, conflict prevention, and to HADR on the other end. Our ships and submarines and aircraft have been deployed over a large period of time, and these will continue to do so in the future. My vision as the CNC of the Western Naval Command is primarily to focus our efforts towards national interests, making sure that we deter our adversaries and if the conflict is thrust upon us, win it comprehensively. Accordingly, we've been putting our ships, aircraft, and submarines to sea to maintain continued presence, be it through the mission-based deployments or initiatives of foreign cooperation. While we continue to operate out of sight of most people, our focus is also on coastal security, and a large number of mandated tasks will be fulfilled in the future. While some are almost there, some are still some work in progress. Of course, in the future, we will also have to look at jointness with a new prism. As you all were aware, the jointness aspects have changed ever since the creation of the Chief of the Defence Staff, and is getting greater focus. And we look forward to greater integration with the Air Force, the Army, and the Coast Guard in the future. I would leave you that COVID has made certain changes in our way we operate, and we look forward to helping and operating with the civil administration in whatever we can do in terms of COVID. There were a large number of efforts which were made by the Western Naval Command in the first and the second wave of COVID, and we are well prepared to handle the Omicron crisis. As far as shipbuilding is concerned, the Indian Navy has always been at the forefront of indigenization and making sure that we remain Atmanirbhar. Towards this, 2 submarines have been recently commissioned, and INS Visakhapatnam has been delivered by Masgor Docks Limited. To sum it all, I must say that the Indian Navy is progressing in the charted direction that it had decided for itself, and it will support each and every national endeavor and the endeavor of the state in the future. Of course, we will maintain a very high level of operational tempo both in far seas as well as in coastal security. With those opening remarks, I open the House for any questions if there are in the press conference.
Thank you, sir. The floor is now open for questions. Kindly raise your hands. The mic will be passed on to you before you ask the question.
Can I just request one thing, that if there are many questions of the same topic, then we can club them together and then we can answer them, all of them together. That will be nice. It will save some time.
Good afternoon, sir. Saurabh from NDTV. So you mentioned the Omicron crisis, and we've seen how the Western Naval Fleet has tackled the pandemic and kept operations going. In fact, Admiral Harikumar also spoke about it earlier. But given that there's a considerable amount of concern, if you could just elaborate a little bit on specifically what you spoke about and mentioned about the Omicron variant of the coronavirus.
So any more questions on the COVID front?
If anyone has got any more question on COVID, you may ask. We'll club the answers together.
Let me try and answer this question. Although I'm not a medical officer, I look at it from an executive perspective of how we're going to deal with this challenge. Omicron has been designated as a variant of concern by the government, and it has also been brought out in the various documents issued by the Government of India that it is well detectable by the tests that we are doing, and therefore we will have to be careful. So recently we've issued a pan-Navy diktat that Omicron is a variant of concern. We have laid down certain provisions that we are going to follow within the Navy, which include all the parameters of COVID protocols, all the compliance to the state government directives, as well as maintaining a very clear and distinct COVID hygiene and system. As far as our beds are concerned, we have geared up a substantial amount of capability within our hospitals, and therefore we are well prepared to tackle any offshoots of this Omicron. In addition, we have also prepared our places for quarantine, and we look forward to interacting with the state government. If they need any help, we'll be able to provide that help, and we'll be more than willing to walk that extra mile. The aim is to save lives, irrespective of whom they belong, and I think that's very clear in our minds that we will save every life that is possible in this pandemic.
Right, next question please.
हाय सर, मैं दिनेश मौर्य इंडिया टीवी से। सर मेरे दो सवाल है। पहला सवाल ये कि चाइना ने कहा है कि वो 3 लाख नए रिक्रूटमेंट करने वाले हैं। साथ ही में पिछले हफ्ते शी जिनपिंग ने कहा है कि भविष्य के युद्ध को जीतने के लिए अभी से तैयारी करना जरूरी है। तो भारत, ये बहुत पहली बार ऐसा हुआ है कि जब किसी बड़े देश के सर्वोच्च नेता ने भविष्य के युद्ध को जीतने की बात कही है। भारतीय नौसेना शी जिनपिंग के इस बयान को किस तरह से देखती है?
ओके, दिनेश मौर्य जी, मैं कोशिश करता हूँ हिंदी में आपका जवाब दिया जाए। हर देश अपने सेनाओं को इस तरह प्रिपेयर करता है कि अगले जो युद्ध होगा उसमें उसकी विजय प्राप्त हो। तो ये एक नॉर्मल स्टेटमेंट है जो कि एक पॉलिटिकल लीडर ने किया है, एंड उसके साथ में कई सारी प्रक्रिया उसके साथ शुरू होती है। सो ये लार्जर डायरेक्टिव है। हमारे प्रधानमंत्री ने भी कई ओकेजन में ये बोला है कि हमारे देश की सेनाओं को हर वो असलहा प्राप्त हो, हर एक जो चीज़ें भी रिक्वायरमेंट हो उसको मीट किया जाए। सो इट्स अ स्टेटमेंट विच इज़ मेड बाय चाइनीज़ लीडर, उनके प्रीमियर ने इसको किया है। और रिक्रूटमेंट एक उनके यहाँ चैलेंज है। सो उन्होंने कहा है कि 3 लाख लोग लेंगे। अब किस कैटेगरी में लेंगे उसका ये सब देखना पड़ेगा। और ये एक स्टेटमेंट है जो कि पॉलिटिकल स्टेटमेंट को क्लियर है। Any leader in the country, anywhere in the world, will make a statement like this. So I think we must examine the details of this statement. What उसमें क्या इसके पहलू हैं और इसमें क्या क्या होगा, और उसके बाद से इसके बारे में देखा जाएगा। पर मैं आपको एक और चीज़ बताना चाहता हूँ कि जो देश की जो कोई भी सेनाएं होती हैं उनका एक लॉन्ग टर्म प्लान होता है। सो चाहे वो भारतीय नौसेना हो, चाहे और कोई सेना हो, उसका एक लॉन्ग टर्म प्लान होता है। तो इंडियन केस में एक लॉन्ग टर्म इंटीग्रेटेड पर्सपेक्टिव प्लान है। तो उसके हिसाब से एक ग्रोथ होगी भारतीय सेना की और भारतीय नौसेना की। तो उसके बेसिस पे कुछ काम चल रहा है। और जैसा कि आपको पता है कि करीब 39 जहाज़ जो हैं अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन चल रहे हैं भारतीय नौसेना के लिए, और 49 जहाज़ों के लिए A1 मिल चुका है। सो ये एक शिप बिल्डिंग एक लॉन्ग ड्रॉन आउट प्रोसेस है। सो उसके लिए काम चलेगा, और जैसे जैसे ये जहाज़ इंडक्ट होंगे, जो कोई भी इसके लिए मैन पावर रिक्वायर्ड होगी वो इंडक्ट होगी। ये तो गवर्नमेंट का एक सिस्टम बना हुआ है, और मुझे इसमें कोई ज़्यादा परेशानी नज़र नहीं आ रही है कि अगर हमें कुछ उसका रिस्पॉन्स देना पड़ेगा तो एक प्रोसेस है, बट उनका क्या स्पेसिफिक्स है उसको एग्जामिन करके देखना पड़ेगा। आपने जो बताया, थैंक यू।
इसके अलावा एक और सवाल है। हाल के महीनों में बड़े पैमाने पर हजारों टन ड्रग्स वेस्टर्न कोस्ट पर पकड़े, खासतौर पर गुजरात पोर्ट पे। तो सर क्या इसका ड्रग स्मगलिंग रूट पता चल पाया? एक दूसरा क्या कोई पाकिस्तान लिंक जो अगर आपको जानकारी मिल पाया हो, क्योंकि बड़े पैमाने पर ड्रग्स आ रहे हैं भारतीय।
Samir Karve from Maharashtra Times. Question supplementing to this. Recently, there have been seizures in Arabian Sea, and the doves were passing from Makran Coast to various destinations, from Mozambique to South Africa and various destinations. So, is it still on, and is the Afghan-Pakistan nexus still seen in this drug trafficking right now also?
You have a similar question?
Prashant from the PDA. Sir, what efforts have been taken to curb this menace? I'm pretty sure
have mobilized its assets to tackle this menace. Can you throw some light on that?
Okay. ये जो ड्रग मेनेस है इसको लेट मी हैंडल इट एट द मैक्रो लेवल. इसमें देयर इज नो डाउट कि ड्रग में जो पैसा आता है वो लेजिटिमेट तरीके से इस्तेमाल नहीं होता है, और ज़्यादातर ये पैसा जो है ये या तो चैनलाइज हो जाता है टेररिज्म की तरफ या मैरिटाइम टेररिज्म की तरफ या पायरेसी की तरफ या अनटूवर्ड एक्ट्स की तरफ. पाकिस्तान का इसमें हरदम बहुत बड़ा हाथ रहा है थ्रू आउट, और उसमें कोई डिनाइबिलिटी नहीं है. ना ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम क्या हुआ है कि जो ड्रग्स लैंड रूट से जा रहे थे वो अभी इन्होंने सोचा कि ये सी रूट में ज़्यादा आसानी है इसको ले जाने के लिए, एंड मोस्ट ऑफ देम वर डिस्टाइंड फॉर यूरोप एंड अमेरिकाज दैट एरिया, बिकॉज वहीं पे पैसे मिल रहे थे इन लोगों को उसकी वैल्यू पे. नाउ ऑफ लेट वी हैव सीन अ ट्रेंड that a large number of Iranian DAOs or DAOs which are registered in the, in this general area of Indian Ocean have been used by the Pakistani side. And इनकी जो कुछ लोगों की modus operandi थोड़ी अलग अलग है, but over a period of time because of a huge amount of surveillance effort, and each of these drug catches are actually based on some intelligence, because unless until you have the intelligence, the ocean is very large, so to track all of them may not be possible. So based on the intelligence input that comes to us from various sources, be it the multinational forces, be it the our own law enforcement agencies, that we are able to put a large amount of area under surveillance. इसमें हमारे जो एयरक्राफ्ट हैं, PATI एयरक्राफ्ट हैं और कई सारे और अनमैन्ड सिस्टम्स जो हैं उनको इस्तेमाल किया जाता है, और उसकी वजह से जब इसको सर्वेलेंस पे रखा जाता है बोथ इन टर्म्स ऑफ कहाँ पे हैं और क्या बात कर रहे हैं, तो उससे कुछ लीड्स मिलती हैं. उस लीड्स के बेसिस पे इनका ऑपरेशन होता है, और बेस्ड ऑन द ऑपरेशन वी टेक अ कॉल एज टू व्हाट इज टू बी डन, एंड मोस्ट ऑफ देम आर गेटिंग कॉट who are operating in our area. Now any support that is required closer to, let's say, the east coast of Africa, we put our surveillance assets there also. So there is a lot of cooperation happening internationally between navies. There's a lot of cooperation happening within the country, between the law enforcement agencies, the anti-drug agencies, the Coast Guard, the Navy, everybody. So I think we are playing as a team, and because we are playing as a team, I think we are getting a lot of success. So that's the bottom line, and our aim is to make sure that this drug cartelization and the movement of drugs is caught at the earliest, and that will be our effort in the future.
Samir Karve again from Maharashtra Times. Recently, in times of disaster, as Navy is the first responder as a rescue mission, INS Kolkata, Kochi have done a great commendable task, handled challenging task. But there were many loopholes seen during that time. So has Navy, especially Western Naval Command, given any recommendations to the government regarding various things seen and whatever the experience we have seen during that time regarding the barges which were operating, the protocols which were not followed during the cyclone, all these things taken into consideration? Has there been any specific recommendation to the government to tackle such disasters and to prevent such disasters to save the lives?
I'll request the Chief of Staff, Admiral Swaminathan, to answer this question. He was very much on the scene of the action, and therefore he has first-hand knowledge. So I'll request him to answer this question.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Admiral Swaminathan. I'm the Chief of Staff of the Western Naval Command. But in my previous job, I was the Flag Officer Offshore Defense Advisory Group. And all of you would recollect that this incident happened in the offshore, so that's on offshore. So I was very much involved not just in the rescue, but in the post-rescue analysis of the incident as well. There was a high-level committee that was constituted by the Government of India that was headed by the DG Shipping. It had DG Shipping, it had the Director General Hydrocarbons, and the JS, a Joint Secretary from the Ministry of Defence as members. and they were, allowed the latitude to co-opt any other member that they may want. So I was also co-opted as a member of that. So this high-level committee went through all aspects of the incident, from how the offshore was administered. The offshore has an ecosystem in which a lot of work happens through several levels of contracts. There are several levels of contracts, contractors and subcontractors. There are service providers, there are vessel providers, there are all kinds of people there. So the first part they looked at was how that entire ecosystem is organized to carry out offshore work. And then how is it organized to look after these kinds of contingencies, that sector, because it's a sector that has multiple players. There were some things that needed to be improved there. On the day of the incident itself, the behavior of the people, why that happened, what is the communication between the masters, the people on the side, and those kind of things. Safety equipment, safety procedures, safety processes, all of that. So all aspects of the incident, what happened before, what happened during the incident, what needed to happen after, all of them have been analyzed thoroughly. And to the best of my knowledge, the high-level committee has made a whole raft of recommendations and submitted to the government of India, and I'm sure it's being considered at the moment by the government of India.
Okay. राजीव जी से सवाल ये सर कि सागरी सुरक्षा के साथ साथ अब सागर के व्यापारिक भारतीय व्यापारिक रास्तों की सुरक्षा की जिम्मेदारी आ रही है। किस तरह से इस पे काम किए जा रहे हैं, आने वाले दिनों में और कौन-कौन से इस पर बदलाव किए जा रहे हैं?
राजीव, अगर मैंने आपके क्वेश्चन को सही से समझा है, आप ये पूछ रहे हैं कि कोस्टल सिक्योरिटी के बारे में।
जी सर, कोस्टल सिक्योरिटी के साथ साथ जो व्यापारिक रास्ते हैं उसके लिए।
ओके।
Hello. Sir, similar to this question, I'm Manish from Hindustan Times. During your speech, you mentioned that there are a couple of non-traditional threats. So, can you just elaborate on what kind of threats we are just getting in our region? Thank you.
In line with the same question, I am Vinaya Deshpande from CNN News 18. While speaking about coastal security, you also said that some of the part was still work in progress. If you could elaborate on that, what measures and are there any time frames with respect to the work in progress about coastal security? Thank you.
Okay, let me try and address this coastal security issue on a macro perspective, just to give you a broad guideline. कोस्टल सिक्योरिटी में 3-4 मेजर स्ट्रैंड्स हैं. If I were put him 4 major strands, and then there are sub strands to it. Now this entire thing is governed by the CCS Cabinet Committee on Security Approval in Feb 2009, and a large number of mandates were given both to the Navy and other agencies, and based on those mandates a lot of work has happened. So let me just take these 4 strands that I am talking of. First is that we must know what is happening. That means we must maintain surveillance. So we must try and see what is happening, how it is happening. So for that we have employed a system of aircraft surveillance, we've employed a system of helicopter surveillance, and surveillance by unmanned systems. Unmanned systems gives us greater capability because they can remain on task for long. Then we also deployed surface units on a regular basis. When I say we, means the Navy and the Coast Guard both, because it's a shared charter. While the Navy is in the lead, the Coast Guard is required to assist. In addition, we are maintaining electronic surveillance. Be it radars, be it the coastal security network, the radars, the AI, the electro-optical, the AIS, the LRIT, all those. Now to merge all that information that emerges from this huge amount of surveillance that we do, we have a center which is called the Joint Operations Center. Now all this information is put in there, and we try and make sense out of it, that if this boat is going like this, this is the pattern that it is observing. So a lot of big data analysis is happening there, so that we find out what are the trends that are emerging and what is happening where. In addition, there are many other operation centers that we are looking at. So, after knowing what is happening in the maritime domain, now the next is also much of it is happening because there are our own people. A lot of fishermen are going out to sea. They are doing a lot of work. Commercial activity is happening. Fishing is happening, and it impacts the livelihoods of many people. So what we've done is we've said, okay, first and foremost, we must know what kind of boat you are using. So there's a boat registration program. Then we said a state or a district must have same color boats, so that you don't have different kind of people coming. So let's say a boat from Maharashtra goes across to Tamil Nadu. We know exactly this boat is from Maharashtra. Then what we've done is we've said that each of these boats must have some electronic device, so transponders. Now this transponders is the work is still in progress. Like you asked Vinay, you asked this question. This is one work which is still in progress. Then what we said is every person who goes on the boat, the fishing boat, must have some ID. So there was a problem between ID because what is happening? The owners are different, the people who are going on the boat are different, and that's also a floating population. So he said, okay, please have biometric IDs. So biometric IDs have been put. Then there are fish landing centers and fish landing points. So he said there should be a process where the person who goes out must also come back. So that's another thing. In addition, we've had a lot of coastal security meetings and community interaction programs. So the aim is to educate the fishermen who go to sea so that they are our ears and eyes. We also tell them so that we can differentiate between our fishermen and somebody who's not so friendly with us. The third thing which we want to say is there has to be a response mechanism. Now to have a response mechanism, of course, they'll be given by the response mechanism will be either by the Marine Police, which is closer to the coast, the Coast Guard, which is slightly further away, and the Navy, which is on the entire band. So the response mechanism has to be generated by this. So therefore, a large number of assets, be it the coastal security scheme phase 1 or phase 2 for the Marine Police has been put into place by the NCS, MCS. For the Coast Guard, a large number of assets have been inducted for coastal security. For the Navy also, there is some asset accretion for coastal security. Now, we put all these in place, so therefore we must excise this on a regular basis. So because we have to excise this in a regular basis, we have something called op trigger, which we institute. Then we have some operations called excise chaucus, excise sajag. We do these excises so that we find out how good are we. Then we have larger excises like Sagar Kavach, which is on a state basis, full state get excised, and excise sea vigil, which is on a national level. So sea vigil east will happen or sea vigil will happen for the entire country. So what we are trying to do is to build the blocks on which this entire coastal security will rest, and we will be assured of our ability to have a fail-safe system in place. I hope that answers your question.
Vinayak Parab from Lokaprabha. It's been mentioned in the press release that INS Vikramaditya is going through some major refit. So can you throw some light on that, whether there will be some new systems on Vikramaditya?
I'm sure all of you have own cars, and your cars has to go for servicing at some point in time. So similarly, ships also have to go through a servicing routine. They are very complex platforms, and because they are complex platforms, they have to be repaired, and everything has to be tested to normal standards on a regular basis. Similarly, Vikramaditya was due for a refit. A refit has started, and that is progressing on time. And unlike cars, which we discard after 15 years, the government makes a discharge after 15 years. Ships last for long, and therefore they get periodic upgrades. So that is what is happening. It's a long refit of 1 year, and that's what is going to get completed shortly. So there's nothing major which is happening. It's just routine maintenance.
सर मेरा नाम चिन्मय है महाराष्ट्र टाइम्स से. सर अभी काफ़ी न्यू एक्विजिशन वेस्टर्न नेवल कमांड में जैसे विशाखापट्टनम क्लास इज गोइंग टू एंड कलवरी क्लास ऑलमोस्ट खत्म होने आया है. P-75I जो प्रोग्राम है वो भी फाइनल स्टेज में है. ये सब होने के बावजूद what is the exact need of WNC? Means are we short in the warships or submarines or at par है या what is the status?
Supplementary question to that, sir. I'm Parth Satam. I'm an independent defense journalist. Sir, is there any update on the ISC-2? What configuration it might have? Whether it would have an email system or a Capova system? And secondly, sir, there have been talks about new generation destroyer concept called as Project 18. What category do we put this class at? Like, sixth generation warships, or what configuration it might have, and what weapon systems will be envisaged? Thank you.
Just to add to this, my question is more general. बड़े वृहद तौर पे मैं आपसे पूछना चाहती हूँ, हर शख्स आपसे एक्सपेक्ट करता है कि आप ये करें और रक्षा करें, लेकिन सच बताइए इंडियन नेवी अब गवर्नमेंट से क्या एक्सपेक्ट कर रही है? उन्हें कहाँ पर ऐसा लगता है कि ये वो पॉइंट्स है जहाँ पर काम होना अभी तक बाकी है, जो शायद नहीं हो पाया है? Thank you.
So we got a lot of questions of the future Navy. Okay. जैसे मैंने पहले बताया that नेवी में एक मैरिटाइम, लेट मी पुट दिस इशू इन लार्जर पर्सपेक्टिव. देयर इज अ नेवी का एक विजन डॉक्यूमेंट है जो कहता है कि नेवी ये करेगी, एंड दिस इज बेस्ड ऑन द डायरेक्टिव्स ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट दैट this is what the Navy is expected to do. Now, based on the vision document, of course, there is a document which says that this is the maritime capability that we need, but you cannot create a capability overnight. So it will take a finite amount of time and it will take a finite amount of money. Plus, it will also depend upon how much capacity you have in the country. So while the Indian Navy has supported and has nurtured all the shipyards in the country, ranging from Mazdocks Limited to GRSE to GSL, private shipyards everywhere, CSL. Now there is the capacity in the country is only finite, and if we go back into our naval history, we'll realize that while initially when we started in 61 building ships, we were building very few ships in the country, and most of them were getting imported. Now the trend is totally different. Today we have 39 ships on order, out of which 37 are being constructed in the country. Only 2 are coming from abroad. And those are also coming from abroad because there are capacity constraints that we cannot build at the rate that we want to build. So the Maritime Capability Perspective Plan, which is already in vogue, is the one which decides what capability will emerge in the future. And this capability is directly related to the role that is assigned to the Navy. Now, the capability is on 3 fronts: ships, submarines, and aviation assets. So, because the Navy is a 3-dimensional service, we concentrate in all 3. And therefore, something or the other is progressing on all the fronts. In addition, we will have to match the requirement of manpower with these assets as they come in. And also we'll have to match the creation of infrastructure which will come in with these assets. So it's a very complex process, and there's a lot of effort which is put into to evolve this long-term perspective plan. Now, based on the perspective plan that you heard of the defense acquisition procedures 2020 and its predecessors, that certain amount of process gets started, whether it is taking the AON or issuing the RFP or doing the trials or building ships, things like that. Now the ISC-2 is very much a part of that, and the ISC will be a centerpiece of our entire conduct of operations at sea. Similarly, the submarine provides us to do sea denial. Those will also be inducted at some point in time. Project 75 India, I think the RFP has already been issued. Why I'm trying to tell you all this is, most of it is done by the Naval Headquarters, and it is their charter. In Western Naval Command, we monitor some of these, but we are not directly responsible for it. So while I may answer some questions, I think you will have to revert to Naval Headquarters for most of it to find out what is the exact status, because we do not monitor it on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. We monitor it on a 3-monthly basis, something like that. So the ISC2, as far as it is concerned, the framework of the ISC2 has been decided. In fact, the Navy would go to the government to take the AON shortly, and what are the QRs of this ISC are also being finalized, and it would be premature for me to say anything on this till the time the AON is not accorded. The AON is the first start point when the government accepts that this is what the kind of platform that you would get. As far as moving on to the future ships are concerned, the next generation destroyers and the next generation frigates and the next generation corvettes and the missile vessels, these are projects which have been defined in the Maritime Capability Perspective Plan, and much work is happening in all fronts, because if you want to build a different ship which is different than the Kolkata class or the Vishakhapatnam class, a lot of work will have to be done before you go to the government and say this is what the ship will look like. So it will be based on modern concepts, it will be based on modern weaponry, and it will be incorporating all the features of stealth and the requirements of fighting a war up to 2050 or something like that, 30 years down the line. So it's going to be a very modern ship, and perhaps the best in the world. Does that answer your questions, Bharat? Everybody?
Answers the questions.
Okay.
Just one addition to that.
Do we propose to add more of, we are celebrating Killer Squadron right now. So do we propose to add more of that class? Because of late we have seen more additions into destroyers and capital ships. So we also need more fast-moving ships. So do we consider that?
Yeah. In fact, if you just go back, I said there's a next generation missile vessels. So even if you go to the Killer Squadron, the vessels have changed from OSA 1 to OSA 2 to the Veer class to the Prabal class and all. So the next generation missile vessels will also be there in that program.
PTI.
Prashant here. Sir, how have the dynamics changed for Western Naval Command after the tensions on the northern border and also after the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan? And how is the Navy dealing with it if the dynamics have changed?
You are all well aware of the Galwan crisis which happened and what happened thereafter. I think most of the time people forget the role of the Navy that it played in the resolution of that crisis to a certain extent. My view is, although I was not present in the Western Naval Command at that point in time, so I would not say in terms of certainty, but my view is that you have to make sure that a person gets troubled if somebody pokes at his weakness. And if we were to say that comparatively to the Chinese, which was there, the Galwan crisis, specifically the Chinese were involved, I think the Indian Navy was the strengthened force in the maritime domain. And that's what I think we tried to do, and whatever operations we did at sea had a certain impact on the land border and the discussions thereafter.
I'm really sorry for interrupting you. Can you throw some light on this, sir?
What exactly do you want to know?
So you just mentioned that.
See, I would say that let it be where it is. When the time comes, you'll come to know. So we can talk at a later stage on these issues. Some of them are classified, so I would not like to discuss them here. But certainly a large amount of effort was put in by the Indian Navy and the maritime domain, which also had certain impact on the behavior and the negotiations that took place elsewhere. Now, of course, China is making a big navy, and we are conscious of it, and we will have to factor it in our overall plan. They are making ships fast, they're making big ships, and they are going to be in the Indian Ocean in not too far a distant future. So we will have to factor all these issues. They are already here as the anti-piracy escort force. They've been here since 2008, and a large number of their ships, both from the warships perspective, their research vessels, their underwater survey vessels, whole lot of their Chinese fishing militia, whole lot of them are already there in the Indian Ocean region. What we are doing as of now is we monitor presence of each and every Chinese vessel which is in the Indian Ocean region, and we know where they are, and we also let them know where they are. So that's also an important part of the process, that we frequently tell them, okay, we know this is where you are, and we're going to be with you for some time, and then we go away. So we are monitoring them on a regular basis, and our intent is to keep them under full surveillance all the time, and once that is completed, we'll take a call as to how we're going to take this in the future. Of course, there are a lot number of assets which are required for it. The recent induction of the P-8I aircraft is going to help us in this. Of course, we need more assets at sea, and that's why the mission-based deployment is paying off.
Parth here again. The US Navy it has drawn out its own strategy to challenge China in the South China Sea. One of those is cutting down on the number of large aircraft carriers, large capital ships, and considered as distributed maritime operations. That was championed by Admiral Mike Gilding, who visited us recently. So that envisages having smaller carriers, what they call as lightning carriers, and not having big ships, and having smaller underwater vessels to take load of big ships. So basically to spread out, get close and hit China inside what they call as the A280 bubble. So this shift in maritime strategy, how does India perceive this? Do we see, traditional concept of big floating aircraft carriers still relevant, or what is our reading of this shift in maritime outlook?
Okay, let me correct you at the first place. Okay, I had a very close interaction with Admiral Gildea when he was in the Eastern Naval Command. Me and him spent a day together. You have to look at it, everything from a perspective of the US Navy when he speaks. When he says, I need smaller carriers, it means he needs 70,000 tonners. Okay, he has a 110,000 ton carriers. So that's the size difference. So when you say smaller doesn't mean a very small one. Second, when he says we need smaller ships, their ships draw 11 meters in draft, so therefore they can't get into most ports. So he is wanting ships which are 8 meters. So you have to look at a perspective difference. When they talk of their SSBNs and SSNs, they want more boats in the Pacific. Their SSGNs or SSNs which are there, they are about 4 times the size of our submarines. So their size is huge. The Navy is huge, the size of the boats is huge, and their entire concept is huge. So when he says scale down, he wants to come down from 18,000 tonner to 11,000 tons. He doesn't want to come down from 18,000 to 3,000. As far as the Indian Navy is concerned, our destroyers are 7,500 tons. We should be looking at NGDs in the 12,000 ton range. Okay, so for him, what is scaling down from him is a scaling up for us. So that is first thing. Second thing, let's look at the aircraft carriers. I went on board Ronald Reagan recently. Ronald Reagan is about 65 aircraft. So when he says scaling down, he'll reduce maybe 10 of them. But because their aircraft carriers are now full to that level wherein they cannot hardly move the aircraft within the aircraft carrier. So that's the numbers that they are talking of. And there is a mathematics to it. How many sorties you want to generate, what is the sortie generation rate, whole lot of things are there. So when CNO of a US Navy talks, a lot of mathematics has gone into it, and then he talks about it in a public domain. So while he's talking of distributed lethality, he's talking of in the Pacific context, in the South China Sea context, in that context, because of the geography of that area.
That is relevant to the Indian context.
So therefore we have to apply it to the Indian context. In our case, everything is scaling up. We were supposed to be a 200 ship navy. We are yet to reach there. So we've got to go there in some point in time. And that will require, I think somebody asked a question, that will require first and foremost a lot of capability within the country to build ships. The rate at which we are building ships will have to go up. We'll have to have more shipyards building that. We'll also have to kind of have more money allocated to the Navy in terms of the budget, because unless until you have money, you won't be able to build ships that you want. Also, the time frame in which our ships are built will have to reduce. A lot of effort is put in. The Navy has nurtured this indigenous shipbuilding industry for almost 50 years. In fact, 60 years. The first ship ordered, Ajay, was in 1961. So it's 60 years now. So we'll have to take this forward.
Any more questions?
Sir, one question.
Okay, last question.
सर, जिस तरह से नेवी पाकिस्तान और चाइना के नेवी का जो कोऑपरेशन बढ़ा है, हाल ही में उन्होंने एक एडवांस वॉरशिप भी पाकिस्तान को दिया है, उसे आप लोग किस तरह से देखते हैं?
ABP माझा, उघडा डोळे बघा नीट.